You lie there with the lights dimmed, letting the weight of the day slide from your shoulders, and you picture the perfect pirate dream you were sold in childhood. You see the billow of a black flag in gentle moonlight, easy laughter rolling over the rail, a chest of gold coins spilling through laughing fingers under an infinite sky. It feels like freedom, like warm night air on bare skin, like a promise that no shore-bound life could ever equal. Yet beyond the soft edge of that dream lies another picture, quieter, salt-stung, and achingly real. Tonight, as the tides of sleep begin to lap at your thoughts, we drift toward that hidden panorama. I invite you to feel the deck slow rise beneath your feet, smell the tar, the sweat, the damp wood, and understand why the countless souls who turned pirate during the so-called Golden Age rarely tasted the sweetness we imagine. Settle into the creak of ropes and the hush of low waves, and together we will unweave the legend until only the hushed truth remains. A man usually arrived at piracy not by thrill, but by desperation. He might have been a merchant sailor whose pay was withheld, a captive seaman forced at sword point to sign a ship's articles, or a pressed naval conscript escaping the lash. There was nothing glamorous in that moment, only a calculation that a hard life under a crown might be traded for a hard life under a flag of bones. Freedom, yes, but one fenced by hunger, fear, and the law. Step aboard, and the sea owns you. It owns your ribs, your sleep, and the marrow in your teeth. Soon the horizon becomes a thin blue wall you will hardly breach again, because nations close every port once rumor of your vessel arrives. Even the little coves of Nassau and the mangrove shallows of Madagascar are watched, and each anchorage is a roll of weighted dice. Picture breakfast on the fourth morning of light wind. The cook drags back the lid on the dry barrel and lifts hard-tack biscuits that tap like stones against each other. Inside the cracks, pale worms knot themselves, but a hungry deckhand shaves them away with a thumbnail and chews. The salt beef smells of mildew, and the brine that once preserved it has leaked away weeks ago, leaving a crust of green at the rim. There is no fresh water, only weak beer or rum cut with seawater, what the crew calls grog, which both numbs and dehydrates. And so, one by one, your shipmates begin to swell at the joints, their gums puff and bleed, old scars loosen, and teeth loosen too. The silent thief named Scurvy walks the planks. First comes lassitude so deep a man cannot haul a rope, then purple bruises under the skin, then wounds that will not knit. 2 months and a quarter of the crew will be useless. 3 months and a quarter will be dead if no citrus or leafy green is found, yet the nearest patch of earth might be 1,000 blue miles away. When the body fails, discipline closes in. Every pirate company drew up articles, handwritten laws agreed to by signature or by making one's mark. On the deck of the Royal Fortune under Bartholomew Roberts, the 10th article warned that desertion or absence at battle meant death or marooning. Lights and candles had to be snuffed by 8 each evening, for flame could race along the pitch-soaked beams. No fighting was allowed aboard, but quarrels must be settled ashore with sword or pistol. Gambling with coin, dice, or cards was forbidden. Drunkenness was fined a share of plunder. Even music had its rule. The fiddler might rest on the Sabbath, but must play the other 6 days if so ordered. To break these codes was to taste the cat-o'-nine tails, 9 knotted cords, each sliding razors of tarred hemp across bare back. The boatswain counted strokes, while the quartermaster watched the flesh open like river mouths. 20 lashes could lay a man in his hammock for a week, the salted air clinging to his wounds like fire. 40 could stop his heart. Yet the whip, vicious as it was, remained preferable to keel hauling. Imagine being tied to a line, cast over the bow, and dragged the length of the keel beneath the ship. Barnacles, sharp as shattered glass, tear your skin while salt floods your mouth. You surface at the stern, broken, breathless, maybe blind from seawater. Once or twice more, and the body is ruined. Keel hauling, though rare, was dreaded enough to keep most tongues bridled. Another punishment, marooning, was simpler and in some ways crueler. A transgressor was placed ashore on an uninhabited island with a bottle of water, a pistol containing one shot, maybe a biscuit, and whatever mercy a comrade could sneak. From the heat of midday to the cool hush of dawn, he watched the sails diminish, whispering to the receding shape as though it might turn back. Most did not use the pistol for signaling. Now drift below decks. The lower hold is only 4 or 5 feet high in places, lit by swinging lanterns that sputter and smoke. Rats scurry across sacks of damp flour. Cockroaches map the walls. Slop buckets for waste slide as the hull rocks, sloshing onto the planking, mixing with bilge water that gathers ankle deep. The stink of rot and mold is a weight in the lungs, sweet and sour at once. Fresh clothes are rare, and skin soon grows a thin grime of salt crystals. Lice breed in shirt seams, nits hatch in matting hair. The wind may pour clean across the quarterdeck, but down here the air sits like swamp water. In such closeness, a cough becomes an epidemic. Influenza, smallpox, or dysentery can roll from hammock to hammock in a night, and when men die, they are stitched into their hammocks with the final stitch through the nose to be certain no spark of life lingers. The body slides over the rail, a splash, a brief bloom of phosphor, and the sea closes without a ripple. Accident waits at every task. A carronade recoils and crushes a thigh. A splinter thicker than a thumb flies from the rail when cannonballs strike, skewering lungs. A cut from a rusted boarding axe reddens, swells, blackens with gangrene within days. The surgeon, if there is one, is usually a barber captured from a merchantman. His instruments rattle in a wooden chest, a saw, a bolt driver, a hooked extractor for musket balls. He pours rum over the blade, ties a scarf between the victim's teeth, and cuts. No ether, no chloroform, only the pounding roll of drums to muffle screams. Sometimes a man passes out at the second draw of the saw and never wakes, lost to shock or the fever that follows. Even survivors pay dearly. A stump festers, a fractured skull throbs until madness takes thought and sleep alike. Yet the ship must be sailed, the guns manned, the lines hauled. No one can rest long. You may have heard that pirates buried treasure on lonely beaches, marking spots with peculiar riddles and cryptic maps. In truth, most plunder was mundane. Lengths of silk, sacks of cacao beans, casks of sugar, rolls of tobacco, sometimes indigo, sometimes medicinal spices, commodities quickly fenced in black markets of Kingston or Charleston to purchase powder, canvas, and bribes. Coin appeared occasionally, Spanish silver pieces of 8, French louis d'or, English guineas, but dividing metal evenly among a crew of 90 required hours of counting, weighing, and argument. A captain typically received 2 shares, the quartermaster 1.5, gunners and mates 1.25, common sailors 1. Wounded men drew small compensations, 600 pieces for the loss of a leg, 500 for an arm, 400 for an eye. Handfuls of wealth vanish fast in waterfront taverns, in dice games, or in the palms of merchants selling rotten beef at inflated price. Few pirates retired rich. Many died with only a ragged shirt to their name, or were hanged with coins sewn secretly beneath their collars, never to be spent. The democracy aboard a pirate ship is praised in pamphlets and lecture halls, yet its fairness hid a razor edge. Captains were elected, yes, but any faltering courage in chase, any hint of favoritism in the carve-up, could see a leader stripped and flung overboard at the next council. Votes were usually raised hands on the quarterdeck, a murmur of aye or nay, but peer pressure pressed heavy. Speak against the majority, and your next rope might be a noose. Between elections, authority was absolute. When the order came to reef sail in a midnight squall, refusal meant instant death. In battle, there was no hiding. Pistols cracked in the smoke, swords rang, men clambered monkey-like into enemy shrouds, and once the fighting stopped, the counting began. Dead, wounded, prisoners, plunder. A captured surgeon might be invited to stay if he wished, but a stubborn merchant captain was sometimes forced into the sea. Mercy existed, scattered, unpredictable, shaped by mood and thirst and the tenor of the day. Longevity, then, was a mirage. The average pirate career lasted scarcely 2 summers. Letters of marque ceased after wars ended, and suddenly privateers became outlaws. European navies sharpened their hunt. Governor Woodes Rogers in the Bahamas accepted surrender from some crews, but pursued the rest without pity. The broadside of a 50-gun frigate could wreck a sloop in minutes. Blackbeard, Edward Teach, fell beneath a swarm of Royal Navy sailors, his body cut with 20 wounds before his head was carried on a bowsprit. Charles Vane fled storms and fleets until wrecked on a reef, captured and hanged at Port Royal. Stede Bonnet, the gentleman pirate, dangled from the gallows while the crowd jeered at silk stockings turned ragged. Even Anne Bonny and Mary Read, fierce and cunning, met cold cells and uncertain fates. The rope became a common gravestone, the gulls the only mourners, yet mourning on the quarterdeck could still enchant. A peach-rose dawn spread behind sails so white they glowed. Flying fish broke the surface in glittering arcs. Dolphins chased the bow wave, turning sideways to eye the barefoot men above. For an hour there might be music, a tin whistle, a battered fiddle, a drum knocked from an empty powder keg. In those fragile moments, camaraderie flared bright as a struck match. Then the sun climbed. The tar softened into sticky pits beneath bare soles. Rations were handed out. Work resumed, and the romance faded like mist. Consider the smell of gunpowder clinging to hair after a skirmish. Consider the echoing silence of night watches when the sea is a black mirror and the only sound is the slow slap of swells against planking that leaks drop by drop. Think of finding a shipmate motionless in his hammock at dawn, lips blue, breath gone, and there is no time for a sermon. The body is sewn, the rose of Sharon red in a hoarse whisper, and weights are tied to the ankles. Plunge, splash, and the sea swallows the evidence of fear. Each death reminds the crew that tomorrow it might be another throat laid open. The unsanitary deck breeds other foes, boils rising on thighs, mildew crusting clothes, foot rot that splits skin to the bone. Mosquitoes swarm at equatorial anchorages, carrying malaria. Water barrels slime over with algae. Men drink brine and grow delirious. Some nights a hand climbs the ladder to the rail, stares at the star-studded dock, and lets gravity pull him into oblivion. They call it the Deep Six, a quiet suicide the articles cannot punish. In the morning, none speak of him. A new name scratches onto the muster roll of the lost. The cook divides rations among fewer mouths, and the captain scans the horizon for prey while a gull follows, expectant. Why then did men choose this path? Perhaps because wages on a merchantman were stolen by owners, because the Navy's lash flayed backs for the smallest offense, because a life of poverty on land seemed as hopeless as death at sea. Some craved vengeance against empires that had pressed them, flogged them, starved them. Some hoped for one miraculous prize that would buy a farm and a peaceful old age. A few were simply fugitives whose crimes of port or alley might be pardoned if they vanished beyond charts. Whatever the motive, each soon found the sea a stern master. The myth of endless revel gives way to a regimen of watches, 4 hours on, 4 hours off, through heat wave and squall and doldrum calm, when sails hang limp as laundry and hope sweats out of the skin. The night sky from deck can humble even the hardest throat. Constellations unnamed by landsmen sprawl overhead. The shark's teeth, the broken knife, the lantern. A faint green shimmer of the southern lights might paint the horizon. A helmsman, scarred to the chin, whispers a childhood lullaby as he spins the wheel, one spoke left, one spoke right, keeping course by a star that died eons ago. He misses the sound of church bells. He dreams of bread that is soft, of water that is clear. He dreams of stepping on grass that does not tilt beneath him. These dreams drift through hammocks like smoke, yet morning always tramples them. Some mornings open with cannon smoke. A merchantman hoists colors of Spain, but her stern sinks low, cargo heavy, so pursuit begins. The pirate crew runs out the guns, loads iron shot, aims for the rigging to cripple, not sink. A broadside roars, lengths of line snap, the merchant's mainmast cracks. Grappling hooks fly and men swarm over. A minute of terror, a flurry of blades, and the prize is taken. Prisoners are herded to the quarterdeck, hands raised, eyes wide. Some will join willingly, preferring hazard to slavery in Spanish mines. Some will be set adrift in longboats. A captain may be mocked, stripped of fine coat and hat, then sent home to explain himself. The plunder is hauled across, inventoried, parceled. Cheer rises, rum flows. But even on that crest of victory, the thought lingers. Tomorrow, this could be reversed. Another ship, larger guns, harsher men, could gut us the same. Disease, more than battle, carves names off the roll. Yellow fever crouches in Caribbean harbors. Typhus rides lice in every seam of cloth. A man might fall feverish at sunset, and by dawn be gone, his body so thin the hammock sags scarcely at all as it drops through the air. Rum is the only anesthetic, yet it thins blood, dulls reflexes, clouds judgment. Drunken crewmen slip on wet planks, crash into open hatches, drown in the hold. Alcohol kindles quarrels too, though the code forbids fighting aboard. When blood spills, the ship's council demands satisfaction next time they anchor. Two men circle on sand with cutlasses until first blood, or until one fails to rise. The surgeon waits with needle and heated blade. Look now at the ship herself. Her hull is oak-scarred by storms. Tar fills seams, but leaks in baking sun. The sails are patched with canvas, stolen from half a dozen nations. Their colors show like ghosts beneath the dyed black. Each rope has splices where old yarn frayed. The guns, captured from prizes, are of mismatched bore, requiring odd scrap iron to serve as shot. Powder stores are always low, fuses often damp. When lightning walks the yards in an electric blue, every man glances at barrels lined near the galley and swallows hard. A single spark could scatter timbers across 10 miles of sea. And yet, in rare seasons, luck runs hot. A sugar fleet stumbles under poor escort. A pay chest bound for colonial troops rides a slow brig. Suddenly, the crew's pockets jingle. Clothes are replaced, wounds tended, water casks filled with sweet rain. They swagger ashore, courting the giddy girls of rum shops, buying knives with pearl handles, tossing coins to street urchins. But word leaps like fire across islands. Governors post rewards. Sloops of war slip from harbor after harbor. Hunters become hunted. That windfall of gold turns to ballast in the gut because every tavern keeper and harbor pilot now knows your face. In the final chase, men toss guns overboard to lighten draft, cut anchor lines, slash extra rigging. They pray for squalls others shrink from. Some hide below, clutching talismans, while chain shot whistles overhead. When the fight is lost, some surrender hoping for king's mercy. Others blow the powder magazine rather than swing from a yardarm, and lanterns of flame climb the rigging like red vines. The ocean boils at the blast, and burning spars fall into waves that hiss and steam. Dawn will find charred planks bobbing, gulls picking at bodies, and in some distant tavern, a ballad maker will add a new verse to frighten children. If captured alive, a pirate's final journey is ironically the tidiest of his life. Shackled, he is carried to dock, marched through streets where citizens jeer, into a courthouse smelling of candle wax and ink. The verdict rarely wavers. The gallows wait at execution dock or along the Thames. A chaplain murmurs scripture none have heard in years, and then the rope snaps taut. After hanging, the body might be coated in tar and gibbeted, hung in an iron cage at river's edge, so that passing sailors read the steady message. Piracy ends here. Gulls perch on the cage, children point. The tide rises and falls around bony feet. At night, lanterns flicker along the quay, and shadows of the cage dance. A scarecrow warning to every deckhand dreaming of mutiny. Yet the myth survived because tales promise what fact cannot. Writers like Defoe recast robbers as knights of tide, men who laughed at kings, lived by their own law, sprinkled speech with yo-ho-hos that never crossed a human tongue. Illustrators brightened the ragged clothes, filled tankards with endless rum, hid illness behind roguish grins. Theater stages and penny novels burned away the lice, the stink, the dysentery, the sleepless fear of the noose. Children pressed wooden swords against palms and chanted for buried gold, while their elders, who perhaps once served aboard a king's ship, shook their heads and said nothing. Silence is sometimes kinder than truth. Now, as your breathing slows, imagine standing alone on the night deck. Stars wheel overhead. The sea glitters with silent lightning far off. You rest a hand on the rail and feel the vibration of wood alive with worm and water. Somewhere down in the hold, men snore, cough, mutter in delirium. Somewhere on a distant ship, another watcher stares back across miles of black, a tiny lantern marking his presence. Between you, the deep murmurs with secrets. It is the same deep that swallowed hundreds of vessels, thousands of voices, each chasing a hope that outpaced them. The ocean keeps no cemetery, only an endless shifting cradle where memory dissolves like salt. Let the legend fall away now. Let the sword play of Hollywood fade. Hear instead the whisper of canvas, the click of rigging against mast, the small prayers uttered by men who know dawn may not come. Feel the rasp of a rope that burns skin left ungloved. Taste the iron tang of blood where a tooth loosened by scurvy shifted yesterday. Smell tar, sweat, bilge, the sour spice of rum. Picture the captain's bowed shoulders while he recites the articles again to a newcomer, his voice flat with weariness. See the quartermaster pacing, counting shares of cloth and cocoa, already suspecting the numbers will not satisfy envy. Witness the fiddler scraping one soft tune at sunset, bow dancing despite cracked fingertips, though tomorrow he may be slumped with fever. And somewhere, tucked beneath folded coats, lies a tattered page of scripture or a charm braided by a sweetheart long ago, carried still against impossible odds. All this and more lived within each so-called freebooter who raised the black flag. A life painted in romance was, beneath the brushstroke, a tapestry of sores, fear, hunger, pain, and fleeting bursts of comradeship, bright as gull wings in sunlight. It offered equality of vote, but equality of peril. It promised riches, yet delivered rot. Many who set sail under the Jolly Roger found their bones bleaching on coral or turning slowly above a river, creaking with each gust. Their brief stories have been retold for centuries, but their coughs, their fevered shivers, their whispered regrets as the seas rocked them into final sleep, those truths seldom surfaced. Now you, warm where you rest, can release the idea of that life. Let the illusion drop overboard like ballast. Feel the quiet weight of your blanket, the gentle tide of your breathing. The world of fevered decks, of worm-eaten biscuits and lashing ropes, slips astern into darkness. Ahead lies only the calm harbor of sleep, still water reflecting starlight unbroken by sails or gunwales. Permit your limbs to sink into softness, as if into sand warmed by a gentler sun. Hear one last creak of distant timber, the sigh of wind across a forgotten mast, and know that the wild freedom you sought in stories belongs to dreams alone. The sea keeps her secrets, and tonight she will keep them far from your door, letting you drift untroubled into depths where no cannon booms and no black flag flies. Rest, voyager. The tide is kind, and morning will bring a shore untouched by violence, bright with quiet, ready for living in peace.